when we have focus on something that we believe in, or we have focus attention on something that we want, or something that we want to have in our lives, the time element doesn't super matter as much as I used to think it did, because what I have learned is focus and focus attention, focus emotion actually has the ability to, in a sense, collapse time. And so it's kind of like what they're finding in quantum physics right now, that a potential outcome, everything lives somewhat in superposition, right? That all of this, everything that we're in, has the potential to be 10 billion trillion outcomes. But it's our, as human beings, focus attention on something and our anticipation of what it will be that decreases the probability that it'll be anything else and increases the probability that it'll become that thing that we are focusing it into. And it actually then collapses into that. Now, I'm not saying, that's the full picture. Quantum mechanics is still unfolding. There's a lot of stuff that people are still trying to discover and understand in this. But in my life, when I started to practice frequencies and really learn to think and act and move through this world in terms of frequencies, and that defined my attention, everything in my life followed as a direct result. So I've been interviewing a lot of these consciousness researchers and talking with them privately about things. I actually recently did a conversation with Dean Radin. He is his book is so incredible. It's called Real Magic. But he's one of the kind of pioneers in understanding modern day version of quantum physics. Quantum physics is not new, but he's helping to kind of get the information out there and research it. He's also done, research into the double blind or the double slit experiment with the observer effect and all this type of stuff. And I spoke with him about what he is seeing and what other physicists are finding in quantum research. I also spoke with Thomas Campbell about this, another leading pioneer. He was on Joe Rogan not that long ago. And to keep it a complex, ooh, these birds are so pretty. To keep a complex, thing pretty simple, we live in a world where our reality potentially comes from us, through us, projects onto the world, right? So we live in a world where our actual focus, our actual attention has the capacity and actually potentially is rendering reality. This isn't just them talking about this. Donald Hoffman talks about this too, that our consciousness is actually potentially fundamental, meaning it is the baseline of our reality, that everything is consciousness. So looking around, everything out here is a result of consciousness. How insane is this view, by the way? Well, I didn't realize for so long that I had a habit of doing, and I didn't know that this was causing me so much chaos, but I had a habit of thinking and believing the negative things or focusing on the negative bad things in my life and trying to solve those problems. I had a loop in my mind, almost like an addiction to noticing those problems in my life, and then because I was noticing them, I was trying to solve them, trying to fix them. And if what we're talking about consciousness and understanding about consciousness might be true, that meant that I was living in that state of mind in my head, and because I was thinking about it, trying to solve those problems, my focus was there. I was therefore projecting that reality back into my life, more or less, in terms of frequencies, promoting that frequency, projecting that emotion, and effectively calling that back into my life. What I didn't understand was that if I shifted my attention and paid attention to not my problems, but actually all the amazing things that are happening in my life, more amazing things would start to happen in my life. It gets crazy. So before I had learned to focus, before I paid attention to my focus, basically, and started to think about things in terms of frequencies, all I could see in my life sitting here would be negative things that were wrong with me, things that were, potentially going wrong in my life, the bad things that happened yesterday, trying to solve a problem. as I learned to shift my focus and kind of enhance a frequency, because there's an emotional scale, right? There's all these different emotions on this emotional scale. There's joy, there's enlightenment at the very top, which has a higher frequency to it, and then there's, you know, all the way to like numbness sort of in the middle, and then there's shame and regret down at the bottom. All these different emotions are falling on that spectrum, of course, but I started to practice the feelings, the emotions that were up here on the emotional scale when possible, typically first thing in my day. And as a result, I started to experience life differently. I started to actually see all of the amazing things that were actively and actually coming to me because I shifted my focus. So for example, it's like I'm literally living, let's just take a second and like look at how insane this sky is, you know, the skyline is. I used to just walk through life and completely miss it. I would miss all of it. I wouldn't be able to see it. I literally would not be able to see how amazing it was. I wouldn't be able to feel it. And I now know that part of the reason I wasn't able to feel it or see it is because I was practicing all of my attention and my focus on things that were causing me problems. I was practicing the emotions, and I was looping those emotions in my mind, in my life. And because if everything is consciousness, if everything is fundamentally consciousness, and our reality expands from our consciousness, I was literally projecting that into the world, right? Like it's so crazy how that works, but it is true how that works. It's once I started to recognize that I have the power to enhance an emotion, more of that emotion would come to me. It's that simple, it's that straightforward. So like just looking around in my day, before I started to do this, I wasn't able to notice just like what it felt like to wake up in the morning and have it be warm. Like just something that simple. It's just warm in my bed. I wasn't able to like look around and actually truly appreciate how beautiful, you know, the world is. This kind of thing, I always would see like older people kind of appreciating the sunset and the sunrise. I just never got it. I never understood it. But I feel like the older I get, the more I realize that it's the older people that have realized that slowing down and appreciating and noticing all the wonderful things in life are actually the people that are doing it right. Like, because we live in a society where we have so much input, so much constant attention on our problems, we are effectively practicing energy, frequencies, emotions equal to that we're training my reticular activating system, which is an element or a tool the brain uses to continue to notice those things. So the reticular activating system is a really important element to talk about, actually. The reticular activating system is essentially a focusing mechanism. So it's a tool in the brain that the brain uses to effectively take in all of the information surrounding us, which we're constantly surrounded. Like we are literally in a sea, in a world of frequencies. If consciousness is fundamental, then we are surrounded in consciousness. So we have a lot of information coming into us, and we're like receivers. So the reticular activating system sort of like creates a screen and only allows in certain pieces of information, because otherwise it would overwhelm the brain, it would overwhelm the body, it would overwhelm the mind. We can only take in so much, right? It's like the way that dogs can hear a noise that, you know, we cannot hear. So the reticular activating system can be trained. It can be tuned. And that's what I had to learn to do. The reticular activating system, a great example that I like to use is that, you know, if you're driving your car and you realize one day, you know, I want a new car, okay, now you're gonna start paying attention to cars more than you used to. And then you're gonna see, like for me, I used to really want a teal Jeep. I don't want it anymore, but I used to really, really want a teal Jeep. And so for me, I would start noticing all the teal Jeeps that were in my like surroundings, which there aren't that many, right? You would think, But because it was tuned into my focus, I started seeing teal Jeeps everywhere, like literally everywhere I went. I would see like one a day, which again, a teal Jeep isn't that common. There's a red Jeep that's typically more common. And it didn't matter. I had tuned the reticular activating system to effectively notice the teal Jeeps. And because I was noticing them, more of them were coming to me. So this goes back to practicing frequencies, practicing emotions, practicing my focus, my attention. By learning to shift my attention away from all of the things that were going wrong in my life, trying to solve those problems, trying to change them, and putting my attention specifically and intentionally on things that were going right. Not even trying to create things that were right, just noticing things that were going right in my life. I was creating more of that and projecting more of that into my reality. And it's a self perpetuating loop. Once you, for both ways, like once I started to do that, more good things would come to me. And because more good things would come to me, I would be happier. And because I was happier, I was putting more good things into the world, which would then create more good things. And I was noticing more good things and practicing that frequency and practicing that emotion. And it's this whole looping process. You see what I'm saying? That has completely changed my reality. And so I started to learn that there's sort of techniques to doing this. I am somebody who I am a doer. I like to get things done. I've been a sales director for years at a company. I have built an advertising department. I love to make things happen. For me, while I meditate every single day, meditation was never like the only thing that was making things happen. I actually learned the power of writing. Writing is so powerful for practicing focus and attention. And again, focus and attention in this context is in terms of practicing a frequency. Practicing a frequency, which is an emotion tied to a thought. So I started doing this thing that I called the Magic Book. It was never intended to be public. It was never intended to be something that I would, share with people. But it became this tool that I started using like over the last, I would say, probably 5-ish years to help me shift my focus, to help me shift my attention, to help me shift what I was practicing in terms of frequencies and emotions. And since implementing that tool, I can see direct results from my life as a result of using that tool to shift my focus. Like, it's crazy. I went from being anxious, sad, living in that spiraling loop to feeling like I would say my baseline frequency, I call it a baseline frequency, was equal to anxious, depressed, kind of lonely, kind of like expecting the worst. My ex-boyfriend used to tell me I was like the queen of what ifs, because I'd be like, well, what if this happens, And since implementing this thing that I stupidly named the Magic Book, again, it was never supposed to be public, so it was like a joke that I used to say with my friends. I'd give them the Magic Book and be like, this is the Magic Book, and I'd give them the instructions on how to do it. Since doing that, though, every single day and learning to practice those frequencies, those emotions, my entire baseline frequency shifted from all of that stuff that I was saying before, the negative and all that, to actually a 180, where now I go through life I'm so happy. I have the most amazing friends in my life. I have the most amazing career. I have the most amazing health, the most amazing apartment. Even when things shift and I have to make a change in my life and I have a big change that's going on, I just, as a default, expect the best. Expect the best, because I've recognized that when I expect the best, when I shift my frequency, what is equal to that will come back to me. And so by expecting positively and putting my focus on all the things that were going well in my life, all of the beautiful things around me, this amazing sunrise, it's beautiful, it's perfect, all of the amazing people in my life, like it brought that to me, because it's like what we project in our consciousness comes real in our, it's like we're pre-paving the road with our energy, with our frequencies. So anyways, it's not time that's the most valuable thing. It's our focus, it's our attention. As humans, we are creators. I heard this pastor say this once and I really liked it. It said, bees create hives, beavers create dams, and humans, we create futures. So we literally, everything around me, all of this, everything, all of this was created by another human being. And it initially started in their thoughts, in their mind, in their focused attention on what was possible. Because none of this was here before. Literally none of this was here. Like, look at how insane all of this is. We live in like a world it's like magic, you know, but I wasn't able to see it. And by shifting my attention, by shifting my frequency to notice it, to start to feel it, to practice that, I started to have more of it come to me. So I'm gonna go do the magic book thing now anyways. Let me know if you're curious about wanting to learn that, do that. I'm starting a group where I'm actually teaching people how to do this, and you know, be a part of that community, and it's pretty awesome. If you are interested in learning more and how to raise your frequency, how to actually shift your focus and your attention in a real tangible way, drop the word magic book below. And if not, just let me know your thoughts, let me know your comments, let me know how you're doing with all this, if you can relate. Ooh, that was a runner. He just said as a hello to all of us, so hello from the runner. Okay, it's a beautiful day. I'm gonna go take off, and I hope you have a great one. All right, see you on the next one.